named Morgan, and I wrote a poem helping to express some of the struggles that I face as someone on the autism spectrum, and I am going to share it with you. Verbal. A word, a descriptor, indicating that someone can speak words out loud. But it's damaging, because not everyone who is verbal is always verbal. Someone who can speak all the time might get strep throat and be in too much pain to even rasp out a whisper. Someone who is nonverbal may be fully articulate in sign and able to communicate better than you or me. But the trouble is, they might be the only one in the room who knows ASL, because spoken language is de facto in America. And it's frustrating because so many of us would have benefited from being taught sign at a young age, but we're only given speech therapy to learn how to pronounce our L's and R's because spoken language is the default. It's frustrating because I couldn't communicate during a meltdown until I learned to write. But if the resources had been in place at a young age, I could have learned to sign and been able to communicate what was wrong. Because many of us on the spectrum who are verbal aren't always verbal. Many of us lose the ability to use spoken language during times of immense emotional distress, such as during severe sensory overload or on the cusp of a full-blown meltdown. And we would benefit from being able to communicate what is actually going on to confused caregivers, parents, doctors, teachers, the cashiers at the supermarket, to anyone who we may run across in public, because those of us on the spectrum have everyday lives and have to be able to communicate, and we're not always verbal. So the next time that someone in distress is flapping their arms, or frozen in place, or pacing in a fashion that doesn't necessarily make the most sense, instead of asking, "What's wrong?" and demanding, "Use your words," ask, "Would it help to write about it? Would you like to text about what's wrong? Is there any way we could communicate about what's wrong?" And try your best to communicate without words, in the same way that you try and communicate with someone who knows no language in common with you. You'd still try and accommodate them. At least, I hope that's what we'd all do. And in the same way, we should try and communicate with folks who are nonverbal, because not everyone speaks English, not everyone speaks at all, and some people can only speak sometimes, and it's not always voluntary. Telling someone firmly to use their words doesn't help someone who's gone involuntarily mute. I wish that, in the future, all kids with disabilities had access to ASL education from a young age, and that such services were offered even to kids labeled as verbal. And I wish that sign language services were more widely available to people of all ages and abilities, and accessible, and without prohibitive cost barriers, because you never know when you'll meet a nonverbal autistic adult, or someone who is deaf, and can't lip read in a situation where those around them are wearing masks. There are many people out there with disabilities who you may want to communicate with, or who may want to communicate with you. And I wish that less focus was on making everyone equally verbal, and instead on helping everyone to communicate, regardless of verbal status. Thank you for listening to this poem, and I hope that you have a great day. Bye!